Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we are giving some build feedback to one of our Patreon supporters, Triangulated Lightbulb. So shout out to you, Triangulated Lightbulb. It has been a while, a hot minute that you have been supporting the channel, so thanks so much for your support. I think you're actually one of the very first patrons to ever support the channel, so once again, shout out to you and thanks so much for all of your support over the last year and a half. By the way, this is a moment where we can shamelessly plug a couple of things that we are doing here on the channel before we get into the nitty and the gritty of the path of building. First off, today is the last day if you want to participate in our Blood Aqueducts racing contest. So if you want to participate, we are going to be giving away these wonderful, wonderful G3 mouse pads to the top 4 contestants. I'm going to mail them out to the top 4 people who have got the top 4 fastest times for our Blood Aqueducts racing video. So I've got a whole bunch of these wonderful G3 mouse pads that are here, and those are going to be shipped out to our winners. Today is the last day, so all you've got to do is go run in the Blood Aqueducts, see the fastest time that you can come up with going from the waypoint to Highgate, and then submit that via video to the channel via our email, goodguygaming3@gmail.com. Also, shout out because we are in fact doing a giveaway for this particular shirt for all of our Patreon supporters. That is just a G3 t-shirt, so that is going to be done later on tomorrow. We will announce the winner of the G3 t-shirt raffle drawing. Okay, all of that random self-promoting spammage aside, that is one way for me at least to say thank you to all of you who support the channel, is to do some giveaways as we're able to do them. So, of course, those of you who are veterans of the channel, you know the way things work around here. You can like, subscribe, and ding the bell if you'd like to be notified about more videos just like this one. If at any point in time you want to take a look at Triangulated's POB or any of the suggested notes or discussion points or references that we've got for Triangulated on this particular build, you can do that down below in the video description. And at this point in time, there should be above my entirely bald and shiny forehead some timestamps that you can jump forward or back to in order to revisit any of our particular discussion points today. Alright, so Lightbulb, here's the thing. I've got a whole bunch of notes that are handwritten for you. You guys can't read them because my handwriting is literally worse than any doctor on the planet. But today, there's a couple of things that I wanted to touch on with your particular Impale Cyclone champion. So first off, I am just amazed by your gear. Your gear is like out of this world, at least for me. Like when I'm looking at it, those of you who are new to the channel and you're new to Path of Exile, if you're looking at this is gear for you to aspire to after you've been playing Path of Exile for a while. It's something you should aim to get towards. It's not necessarily something that you're going to get in your first or second league, and it is absolutely awesome. So first off, let's take a jump over and take a look at a couple of these items. So first off, I've got to come to your Honor Jack Astral Plate. First off, this is an incredible item. So it's got Killed Enemies Explode, which is a new mod this league, dealing 3% of their life as physical damage. That's absolutely sick. If this chess piece only had that at it as a mod, this would already be worth several exalts as a chess piece. But then on top of it, you've also got attacks have plus 1.4% to critical strike chance. Those of you who are new to Path of Exile who are wondering, well, why does that matter? 1.4 doesn't sound like a very big number. That is added to the base of your attack. So in other words, that's the first number before it gets multiplied and calculated out. So if you look here on Lightbulb's actual build, his crit chance right now, his effective crit chance is 31%. If we take this body armor off, it drops down to 25%. So those of you that are like, oh, well, what's 1.4% socketed for attacks really matter? Well, it matters a whole bunch because that effectively is like almost 7% crit right there. And on a build that is going to scale its damage off of crit and crit reliability, that's a very, very big deal. So first off, very, very nice chess piece here with the Honor Jack Astral Plate. Also, your helmet. Dude, your helmet alone, like this mod, seriously, for those of you who are looking to get into crafting and whether or not crafting is profitable, you can get in and start fossil crafting. Anything that's got nearby enemies take increased whatever kind of damage it is. It could be lightning damage, or sorry, elemental damage. It could be chaos damage. It could be physical damage. Regardless of what it is, there's probably a build out there that's trying to get it. If you're able to get a nearby enemies mod and a life roll and an increased tier 1 energy shield roll, chances are somebody's going to come out and scoop that up right away just to go farm it and lab enchant it. But this particular helm, the Spirit Visor Fluted Bassinet, you've got over 200 armor on it. You've got flat stats that you need, dexterity and int, and then you've also got maximum life rolled on there on top of your nearby enemies take 9% increased damage, which again, for those of you who are new, Anything that says nearby enemies or enemies take, any stat that says enemies take means a more multiplier for damage. So this is a big, big calculation for a damage boost. For those of you wondering just how big, well, right now, Cyclone, with no stages right now, is at, what, 43,000 average DPS. If we take the helmet off, it drops down to, what, 39%? And it's going to be even worse, right, because enemies who are near are going to have mods that are going to affect that. Or are going to be affected is the better way to say that. So there's a ton of damage that is packed into that helmet. Okay, I've said enough nice things. Now let's get into some suggestions. And really, these are just suggestions, Triangulated. Don't take these as, hey, you absolutely need to do these. I think you and I have had a couple of conversations via text over the last week or so that have really pointed out your build is in a great spot. You're a level 96 character. If your build wasn't in a great spot, you wouldn't be level 96 right now. I don't care if you're hardcore or softcore. Like, you're going to die a whole bunch as you're trying to level to 96, even if you're in softcore. So your build is in a pretty good spot right now. But a couple of things, a couple of tweaks, a couple of suggestions. So first off, I'm surprised that you don't go Vaal Pact. That, to me, is a bit of a surprise. So down here on the bottom right-hand side of the tree, you've got a couple of different nodes that are picked up. This is, by the way, this is his amulet oil anointment, Blade Dancer. So if you're wondering how he has this without having allocated nodes, that's how. So you've got this spine that's running along here, and that's going to come down and allow you to get ambidexterity, which is fine. It's an okay node, but I'm actually going to show you one way that you could redo this tree a little bit. So one way that you could redo this tree is you could take 2 points and then a third point go into Vaal Pact. Now, if you do that, your life leech per second is going to be doubled. Your life regen is going to have no effect. Now, if we take away these couple of points, right now your total life regen is only 136, right? It's not like stellar. It's not out of this world. You're not a life regen based build, right? Your total amount of life is only 5,200, so life regen and scaling up life regen already isn't going to be very effective. Whereas your life leech rate is 1279, so we're much more dependent on life leech than we are on our life regen. And you can see if you use Vaal Pact, then your life leech rate goes up to 2,300, so that's half of your life pool, essentially, that you are now available to leech, which is a considerable amount when you want to think about it as a defensive and regenerative layer of the build. The bottom part of this spine requires 1, 2, 3, 4 points before you get down here to this cross section, right? I get that you want to come through this cross section because you come up and you're picking up like over here by thick skin, and then eventually you're coming over here to the right hand side of the tree. One thing you could do is get rid of ambidexterity, and you might be saying, well, iron, that's a whole bunch of damage. Look at the total DPS that's being removed from that. That's 42,832. That's about 7% of total DPS if we get rid of this entire tree, which the whole tree on it is about 13% overall total damage if we get rid of it. So there's some considerable amounts of damage that would be removed there. It is 4 points, right? So this is 4 points, and then this is another 4 points. That's 8 points. You come up here, this is only 3 points. That means you still have 5 points to play around with. If you're wondering, well, where are you going to pick up that damage for 5 points? There's a couple of things you can do. For 4 points, you can come up and grab Brutal Blade, which will give you a little bit more block chance as well as a little bit of damage. If you'd rather come over here onto the left-hand side of the tree, you can come up and grab Razor's Edge, which is going to just give you some flat increased damage with swords. I know you're not scaling bleeding a whole bunch, but there is nonetheless some damage over here for your bleed and for your flat damage. Thirdly, if you'd like to come up here and grab some life leech because you want to leech even more, you can grab Gladiator's Perseverance, which actually, when you look, if you see that you take all of the nodes in this particular tree, it's actually worth this whole node and this whole tree is worth about 8% of the total DPS. So you're losing 13% if you get rid of, like 13% of your total DPS if you get rid of ambidexterity. But your life leech goes up by a considerable amount, by 100, more than 100. And then also on top of that, of course, you're getting some of your damage back, and you're getting some bleed damage if you come up here. And this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So it's the exact same amount of points, and it allows you to redo your tree, so that way you grab Vaal Pact. So a little bit less damage, and we're talking a smidge, a little, not even like a considerable amount of damage, a smidgen of damage for you to gain double your leech rate, as well as even more than doubling your leech rate, because you're going to come up and potentially grab Gladiator's Perseverance, or again, you can come over here and grab the Brutal Blade, or if you'd rather grab another tree that you're already halfway into, you can grab Razor's Edge. So there's a couple of things that you can do there. I'm just not a big fan of ambidexterity and the cost for it, right? It's a pretty high cost. Even if you wanted to respec these 3 points, you could just do these 3 points and then respec them coming across here through Vaal Pact if you really want to keep ambidexterity. So that's one thing. I'm surprised you didn't go Vaal Pact, and there's a couple of ways that you can get there. Okay, the second thing that I really wanted to point here was an item. So this item, Brimstone Razor, is an amazing foil. It's got 464 DPS. For those of you who are looking at this video in the future and you're wondering, hey, what were the mirror tier items at this particular time in 3.9 during Metamorph League? Mirror tier items are like 650 and above. That's what mirror tier foils are going for right now. So if you're wondering, oh, well, that's like 150 points difference. Yeah, but like to get from this particular jewel to a mirror tier jewel is seriously hundreds of exalts worth of crafting. It's, unless you're going to go straight up for a mirror tier foil jewel, it's not worth it in general. So this is fantastic. Okay, this particular weapon is fantastic. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Keep Brimstone Razor. However, Viper Song, this is giving you 452 DPS, which is slightly lower, and on top of that, it's giving you gain 13% of physical damage as extra fire damage. Now, in general, that might be great. It might be great to have a bunch of extra fire damage. However, the way how your skills are set up presently, when you come over and you look at Cyclone, Cyclone is actually set up with Awaken Brutality. Now, Awaken Brutality, great skill. I love builds that can scale on physical damage and that can scale up Impale, which you're doing as you're playing a Cyclone Impale champion. However, your Awakened Brutality has got on it supported skills deal no chaos damage and supported skills deal no elemental damage. Now, you're doing a whole bunch more physical damage because you're using Brutality, which is good. I recommend it. It was one of the first things that I looked at a few days ago when I was looking over your build to see, hey, are you using Brutality or not? Because that's a great way to scale your physical damage, and you were. That's great. However, you're using a weapon that's not going to use one whole mod on the weapon slot. So is it that big a deal? No, because overall, the physical damage on this thing is still ridiculously good. The attacks per second is over 2. It's 2.03. The attacks per second on Brimstone are 2.02. Like, your attack rate is great. You've got 13 attacks per second, right? Like, it's fantastic. Like, you're your build is great, Triangulated, okay? Don't hear what I'm not saying. If you're looking for an upgrade, though, Viper Song is the thing that I would upgrade over the Brimstone Razor. Okay, the next thing to look at is back onto the tree, and it is going to once again be down here in the localized bottom right-hand side of the tree. Since you were coming all the way down here to grab Ambidexterity, I wondered if you were eventually going to grab Iron Reflexes. So at the moment, your defensive layers that you've got on this particular build are as follows. You've got 5,790 armor, and then you've got 1,900 evasion. If you're going to keep your spine, the spine of this travel portion of the tree on the right-hand side of the tree, if you're going to keep this portion of the tree and stay down here by Ambidexterity, it's 1 point to grab Iron Reflexes, and that's another 2,000 flat armor, essentially, 1,938 flat armor that you're going to have built into your character. Your evasion rating is terrible. Your increased evasion on the tree is not necessarily fantastic, right? You're getting a lot of evasion from Dexterity and from other nodes that you're not necessarily caring that much about. So Iron Reflexes might be something for you to consider if you are having any kind of trouble whatsoever with physical damage and mitigating it. Now, of course, there's lots of ways to do this. Iron Reflexes isn't the only way to do it, but looking at your tree right now, you're right next to it, and it's free 2,000 armor, right? So you might as well grab it if you're going to keep your tree in this particular way, and that might be an argument to actually keep your tree this way and not necessarily go up and grab Vaal Pact. Vaal Pact, in which case I would argue you still should go grab it. It's only 2 points away from the rest of it. But anyway, that. I've already complained enough about Vaal Pact. Moving on. Okay, next thing that you want to consider is on your flasks. On your flasks, right here, you've got some great flasks. You've got Cautious Divine Life Flask, which is great, immunity to bleeding. Then you've got Overflowing Chalice. This is okay. I would potentially want to upgrade this with a Bottled Faith. That would ultimately be the big upgrade. But again, that's nitpicking. This is fine for right now. This is where I'm really going to hit you hard. Quicksilver Flask of Warding. Movement speed is fantastic. It's a great quality of life thing. You don't necessarily need it. You're a Cyclone build, which means you're always moving anyway, and a lot of your movement scales off of your attack speed. Your attack speed is fantastic. So your movement speed is not like some massive thing. in my opinion. If you would rather use the Quicksilver Flask, go for it. I personally, as soon as I can get rid of Quicksilver Flask because I'm using a movement skill or I'm simply blowing things up faster, using skills than I am actually walking around, then I try to get rid of it and put in some sort of utility flask. So a couple of options that you've got here. You could put in a basalt flask if you wanted to. You could put in just a flat armor flask if you wanted to. So you can either upgrade yourself with like 3,000 flat armor, or you can just have physical damage reduction, which your physical damage reduction is not capped right now. So if that's something that you'd want to do, again, to take care of physical damage, because there's a lot of physical hits, that's an option for you. Also, because there's so much chaos damage in this particular league, if you would rather go with an amethyst flask, there are several different options for amethyst flasks this league. And again, you can still do the of warding suffix if you're doing this on a magic flask for either a basalt flask or an armor flask. That's lots of different options for you to fill in there if you so choose, if you so want. That's for survivability more than it is for speed. If you're running content that's not killing you anyway, let's say for instance you're running tier 15 beachheads and nothing in there is going to kill you anyway, that's fine. Just keep your Quicksilver Flask and move really fast. Other than that though, if you're doing any kind of content that has the potential to kill you, then I would definitely swap over. Next up, picking on you again, Lion's Roar. This is fine. This is where you're getting your flat 3,000 armor from. I would do a couple of things here, okay? One, if you're going to use Lion's Roar, then I would definitely use the Basalt Flask in the other slot in order to get the additional physical damage reduction. But if you're going to use Lion's Roar, and you've got this much currency at this point in the league to be upgrading and to be buying really good upgrades at this point, you should be using a perfect Lion's Roar, okay? I know that's kind of a silly thing, but right now you've got 23% more melee physical on your Lion's Roar, which that can go up to 25% if my memory serves me correctly. So get yourself a perfect Lion's Roar. You know, go splash and spend like 12 chaos to get yourself, you know, whatever it is. Like go spend the big bucks. It'll be an extra 2% more physical damage that you are dealing than what you are dealing right now. So that's it. That's all for right now for picking on your flasks. I think in general, again, as I've said numerous times throughout today's video, you've got a great looking build, but those are a couple of things that you can do to upgrade. Okay, the next thing that I've got for you on here is actually scaling up on these particular skills and the quality of life on your skills. So right now, your setup is Cyclone, Awaken Melee Physical, Pulverize, Impale, Fortify, and then Awakened Brutality. So there's a few things that you could do here. If you don't want to go with the brutality side of things and you want to scale up your damage even higher, then in that case, what you're actually going to do is you're going to keep that one particular foil that gives you gain physical as extra X, and you're actually going to replace the other jeweled foil with another one of those, right? You're actually going to go out and find another one of those, which those are relatively cheap. I actually had those on my Slayer Cyclone earlier this league, and they were like 1x to 2x to maybe 3x at most for really good rolls. We're talking 398 to 400 DPS on the that's physical DPS, not elemental DPS, but physical DPS on the jeweled foil, and then that would also have a tier 1 like gain X as extra X or gain physical as extra X. So there's a lot of damage that you could do there if you want to get off of Awaken Brutality. That's one particular option. Also, another option that some players are using is to actually go with Infused Channeling. Infused Channeling is a great option for players who are using Cyclone. There's a couple of ways that you can play it. Infusion will actually last for 6 seconds after you finish channeling, so you can channel and then finish channeling and then restart, and you'll keep your infusion. That's one way to do it, which oftentimes when you're going from pack to pack to pack, especially again if you're doing beachheads or if you're doing repetitive content in order to push yourself to level 100, that's easy to do. You can min-max yourself doing that where you're constantly gaining infusion, and it doesn't take but half a second to make sure that it's up every 6 seconds. And then of course every 6 seconds that you've got this thing up, you've got supported skills deal 39% more damage. So that's another potential option for you if you'd like to use that. Again, as a defensive layer, while channeling a supported skill, you take 8% less damage from hits of types matching the skill's gem tag, which we're using Cyclone, which means anything that's an attack, anything that's AoE, anything that's a movement skill, anything that's a channeled skill, anything that's physical, or anything that's melee. All of that stuff, if you're using Infused Channeling, you will take 8% less damage from hits of types that match that particular skill's tag. So, Again, if you're looking to push for level 100, you never want to die, and you just want to stay alive for as long as you can, this is another option, and it would mean that you wouldn't necessarily have to take out Fortify, right? A lot of the times when players are giving options, they'll say, well, just take out Fortify and throw something else in there. Put Fortify on, you know, your movement skill, and you can proc that every once in a while. But that's really realistically looking at things the way how Fortify used to be. This particular Fortify gem, the way how it works now, is of course it actually is really helpful because your supported skill deals more melee damage. So it's really beneficial for you to actually use Fortify in your main link setup now, rather than proc it with Leap Slam or with Whirling Blades or with Shield Charge, right? So it's really helpful to stay in. So if you'd want to take something out, one thing that you could take out Pulverize, or you could take out Impale. Again, if you wanted to take out Brutality and just go the elemental route, that's another thing that you could do. But again, as you push for level 100, I would personally keep Fortify in there, and I would personally switch over to Infused Channeling just to make sure that nothing kills me, because literally as you die on the way to level 100, it is like super duper demoralizing. If you think it's demoralizing to lose a character in hardcore, that means nothing. Like, imagine losing like several hours, right? If you lose a couple hours here and there in hardcore when you lose a character while you're going through the story mode, imagine losing hours of your time of leveling from level 96 to 97, 97 to 98, 98 to 99, 99 to 100. Like, you lose hours worth of your efforts every one time you die. So make sure that you never die. Which, this brings me to the last thing that we're going to talk about today. This is totally nitpicky. This is absolute preferences. Triangulated, you do not have to care one iota about what I'm about to say. That being said, there is a big hole that you know I'm going to talk about, and it's right over here. You can see me tagging it right here on POB. Like, the Scion Life Wheel. Presently, you have got like 5,000 life? 5,200 life? That's not a lot of life. Okay, it just straight up isn't. In this particular game, and where we're at in PoE, right now you could bolster this if you want to use Vaal Molten Shell, which you're using, but right now you're using that on a cast when damage taken, along with punishment. If you want to level this up so it's a max level Vaal Molten Shell, so you can just constantly be pressing it and constantly keeping it up. Again, it depends on the sort of content that you're actually running through. If you're scared of stuff, if you are familiar enough with the content to where you know what you need to hold Vaal Molten Shell for. Again, there's a couple of different things that you need to take into consideration about the content that you are engaging with. For me, if I don't want to care about the content that I'm engaging with, I just want a bigger life pool. So the Scion Life Wheel is a big deal. It is a far trip for you to get over here to the Scion Life Wheel. So I would encourage you to do one of two things. As you are making these considerations in your mind about whether or not you're going to go Iron Reflexes, whether or not you're going to go Ambidextrous or not, whether or not you need to keep those nodes over there, I want you to think about just how far spread out your tree is. Just to consider just how farly spread out your tree is. Over here on the right-hand side, you're all the way over here. You've got Fatal Blade, which is good. It's good damage. And you've got Herbalism, which is good. It's good life rate, right? But this entire tree is 3, 4, plus 5, which is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We could still move one over here and still fill this out and grab Thick Skin, right? So we're just going to call it 11. We're going to pretend like we come up here and we grab Thick Skin. And so we're just going to say 11. If we get rid of all of these passive points over here on the right-hand side, we've got 11 passive points to still play with. With 11 passive points, we can come across either through the Duelist tree up, or we can cut across straight from the Marauder tree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and look at that. Boom. Now, over at the top, it says we're at 130 passives because we don't have enough because we filled in over here. But if we remove all this, we come over here and we fill this in. Let's move that. All right, we are now back at level 96. You still have ambidextry, and now your life total is up to 60 or 6,000. I almost said 6,300, but it's up to 6,000. If you can figure out another spot to squeeze in another passive point, now you're up to 6,100. Like, that is a considerable amount of life. That's almost 1,000 life that we just got onto your build from making that one change. Now, did we lose some damage? Yeah, we lost a little bit of damage. We really did. When we come over here, whoops, I think I actually left Cyclone turned on with Infused Channeling. That's cheating. When we come over here, we're down to 33,000 average damage, right? the total DPS is a considerable amount less. That being said, if you're already blowing everything up because of your impales, because of your chance to deal double damage, and because you've got ridiculously awesome gear, and oh yeah, by the way, do I need to remind anybody? Every time you kill something, it's exploding and giving you more damage to anything that's close to it because killed enemies explode. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on right now for your damage. It's really your life and your defenses that you need to be taking a look at as you want to push towards level 100. Anyway, those are the thoughts that I've got. I'm sure our community has got thoughts for you as well, Triangulated, and they're going to leave you some comments down below, and I'm going to take a look at them throughout the day. But of course, thanks so much for your support as always. And again, tomorrow we're going to be giving away this t-shirt, so stay tuned on Patreon. We'll let you guys know on Patreon there. And then, of course, stay tuned over the next couple of days as people submit their Blood Aqueducts farming videos, because we got a whole bunch of mouse pads to give away to people who come up with the 4 fastest times. So shout out to everybody who's participated thus far, and I look forward to going over all of those various builds, just like we did with this in the upcoming Blood Racing Aqueducts results. But thanks so much once again for your support, Triangulated, and hopefully this discussion will help you continue in your push to improve this particular Champion Impale Cycloner. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.